being out in the cold weather. I'm hoping it'll warm up in the next day or so, so we'll feel like it's spring. My name is Pam. I volunteer with the Alzheimer's I'm doing right now. This is the second time I've been to this facility, and it's a great location. I love speaking here. I love talking to all of you. So if you have any questions at any point, please feel free to just raise your hand. Which is specifically, I set my glasses down, community education programs for the quarter. So this three-page document, both sides, it goes through the end of March. So the last couple have already passed, but there's at least some good information coming up soon. And if you're interested in the emails, you'll be getting that flyer on a quarterly basis. Other flyers that are available are any type of virtual education that's available to you, and then the caregiver connection. Before I move on, if you don't mind sharing, are you here because are you a caregiver of someone who has Alzheimer's or dementia at this point? Raise your hand. Are you here to gather information and just learning about the disease? Okay, good. We're here for all of that. The Alzheimer's Association is a group that works throughout the nation to get that education out there. So that's what we're here for. Today we're talking about the warning signs. There's other different types of presentations that can be made, but let's get started with this one. I have a new clicker, so please excuse me if I go the wrong direction from time to time. Our objectives for today is to describe the typical age-related memory versus what could be signs of dementia or Alzheimer's. We'll recognize the common warning signs, discuss the tips on how to approach someone that you're observing these signs from or with, identify possible tests and assessments, both yourself as well as some of the doctor information. I don't claim to be an expert in the medical field, but there are certain things that your doctor is going to talk to you about as a person who is seeing them on a continual basis, that it's a routine thing that they always do once you get above a certain age. And then name resources that are available. Remember, Alzheimer's Association is always a wonderful resource, and of course I'm going to plug it. Sorry, shameful little thing. But let's get started. We're going to work through an example of the Garcias. Now, this is a family. The mother is a 73-year-old widow who lives alone. She used to be a school teacher. She cares about her home, and she has two daughters. Lydia, who is the eldest, and lives just a few miles away, hangs out with her mom every once in a while. And then there's Patricia, who lives out of state. Shut that off. There we go. Lives out of state, but she keeps in touch with her sister. Of course, we always keep in touch with our siblings, especially when it comes to our parents, right? So we're going to be going through a little texting, because you know that's how we communicate now, right? So Lydia's worried about her mom. She keeps losing things in the house, and the house is just a mess. It's just not like mom. The other sister says, well, you know, she's getting older. It's hard to clean up after, you know, you only have so much energy. So let's, they're wondering, should they be worried or should they not? Let's hear from an expert and see which they think.
As we get older, cognitive problems become more noticeable for almost everybody. And it can vary from person to person. Typically with age, people have trouble coming up with the word they want right when they want it. They have trouble remembering names, and they don't think quite as quickly. What's more concerning, or what might be the beginning of a memory problem, is people have a lot of trouble coming up with words or names, and it's happening more frequently, and the words or names don't necessarily come to them later. And then they start misplacing things, but not just once in a while, because we all misplace things, but more often. And begins to interfere day to day. That should be a warning sign for people that this might be the beginning of a memory problem.
Okay, so today we'll be talking about the difference of aging and the normal day-to-day, what you may forget. How many of us have lost our keys in the last couple months? Found them, right? You're here. Great. That's normal. We're going to forget things, especially as you get older. Things just, your brain gets full. But when it's bothering your day-to-day routine and you can't seem to find things or you can't retrace your steps, that's when you start kind of wondering. My husband just retired, 2 or 3 years ago, and I can see a difference. Now, is that because he's not going to work every day and he's not challenged anymore? Or is it that he's so relaxed, it's like, yeah, I'll get to it. Maybe later. It's not important, I lost my keys, I'll find it later. Well, maybe it's later, or maybe that he just doesn't know. It's hard. It's difficult to know. So, we're going to talk about the difference between day-to-day forgetfulness and potentially having more of a medical dementia, Alzheimer's type of issue. So, I just said all that. Let's learn the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's.
Dementia is the umbrella term for an individual's changes in memory, thinking, or reasoning. There are many possible causes of dementia, and Alzheimer's is the most common cause. Other causes of dementia are vascular dementia, which is marked by changes in the blood flow in the blood vessels in the brain. Dementia with Lewy bodies, identified by specific brain changes throughout the brain that include the buildup of a protein known as alpha-synuclein. And frontal temporal dementia, which is marked by brain cell loss in the front sections of the brain, or the frontal lobe. Each type of dementia may have distinct characteristics to cause specific behaviors in the individual. But there is also some overlap in behaviors among the types of dementia.
Okay, my father-in-law, who just passed a couple months ago, was 83 years old. He was diagnosed with dementia, maybe Alzheimer's. He had some other issues also. Of those 4 different types of dementia, because they were never tested, they never talked to the doctor about specific details for him specifically, I can tell you that a little bit of background tells me that he had multiple of those 4 options of the types of dementia he had. Every person is different. Every individual is different, so it's going to react differently to every person. So be open-minded. This is not a check sheet to go through with a friend, loved one, or a person that you might know. This is information to keep in the back of your brain, okay?
More than 100 years ago, Dr. Alzheimer described specific changes in the brain, what we now call the formation of plaques and tangles. Alzheimer's is a progressive brain disease that's marked by these key changes and impacts memory, thinking, and behavior. The brain has 3 main parts: the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brainstem. Each one plays a role in how the body functions. Alzheimer's disease causes nerve cells to die, which leads to brain tissue loss and causes loss of function and communication between cells. These changes can cause the symptoms of Alzheimer's, such as memory loss, behavioral issues, problems with thinking, planning, and at the end stage, swallowing.
It's important to know what the warning signs of Alzheimer's are and to be on the lookout. We know that we change over time, and the warning signs of Alzheimer's can be warning signs of a number of things, but when you see those in yourself or in someone you care about, it's important to check it out, to consult with a doctor, to find out what you're dealing with. Some of the things that can look like Alzheimer's may be other treatable conditions. If it is Alzheimer's, you still want to know as early as possible, because that gives the person and the family time to plan time to make decisions, and it also gives the person with the disease a voice and allows them to say what they want.
You're going to hear me say multiple times, consult your doctor. Because I'm not a physician, as I said, I'm not a medical person at all. But it's important for you to talk to your doctor to get proper diagnoses and to weigh out other possibilities. You just don't know. So always just be aware and learn as much as you can about your circumstances yourself. So let's get into the 10 warning signs. This is all of them. We're going to go through them one by one. So let's start off with the first one. Memory loss that disrupts your daily life. Like I said, we've all lost our keys. We've all forgotten things from time to time. Words don't always come the way you think they should. We lose track of what to call that one thing. I call it a doohickey when I do that. It's just a thing. Sometimes it's forgetting important dates, asking questions over and over and over again, or increasingly relying on what they call memory aids or Post-its to say, Monday I have a doctor's appointment, put it on your fridge. And then all of a sudden you notice, oh, there's another one on the counter. Oh, I put another one on my bedside. When you constantly require that type of reminder, you may want to kind of start thinking about it. Kind of wonder. Now, forgetting an appointment, or I don't know how many times this morning I went onto my computer to say, what time do I have to be there again? I think the presentation's at noon. No, wait a minute, it's at 1. Wait, how long does it take for me to get there? You know, there's a thought process that goes into doing anything. And that's normal. It's okay to ask questions. But when you continually ask and you're not really sure, start wondering. Challenges in planning or solving problems. If you know of a person who is a very good cook, makes the best bread. My father-in-law made the best dinner rolls. Had them every meal we had at their house as a family gathering. He made the dinner rolls. They progressively got, number one, smaller. Big complaint of mine. But also the texture was different. The flavor was different. Even though my mother-in-law was helping him at the same contents, but she was very good as a caregiver to allow him to make mistakes and then just move over them. We never once complained about the dinner rolls because we knew he was diagnosed with dementia, and we knew that's just what happens. Being aware of that makes it less of a confrontation. You know, it wouldn't be a fun family gathering if every time you took a bite out of your dinner roll, you kind of went, ugh. That's horrible, Dad. Why did you make them? No, that doesn't help. What helps is giving them encouragement to continue their lives. So if you notice things are going a little awry, it's okay. Maybe ask a few gentle questions. But to cut them down or get angry with them is not going to help the circumstances at all. Imagine if people started cutting you down, what would be the first thing you would do? Start hiding it. I'd start doing things differently around that particular person because they always get mad about my dinner rolls, so I guess I just will decide not to make them this time. I decided to go buy them or find a different reasoning. So be aware of what's happening, but don't always be extremely confrontational. We'll talk about the conversations later, but as an outsider, just kind of watch.
I was probably spending 4 to 5 times more time preparing for something than I did, say, 5 or 10 years ago. Because of I would lose my thought, I'd lose my focus, I'd get anxious, I wouldn't get to sleep. I was thinking, I was in my sleep, I was thinking about what I was anxious about, which was what I was trying to remember, which was what I was trying to prepare, which I was trying to do. So it was really a vicious circle. So I was able to control it a lot, so that people wouldn't see things, and that there weren't things to be seen. It's what was disturbing me was what effort I had to put into to do the things I used to do more easily.
We all like to be independent, right? We all have our thing that we like to do, whether that's baking or chatting or watching or doing whatever. When it gets uncomfortable to do, they know that it's getting uncomfortable to do. So they tend to just work around it. Let's look at the third one, difficulty completing familiar tasks. Again, baking that bread became more and more difficult. My mother-in-law now makes very good bread. So, you know, driving familiar locations, getting lost. In a town where you may have always grown up or you're very familiar with, all of a sudden you go to the doctor and you don't realize how to get back home. Or where am I going again? We all get lost. I was just saying that GPS is a wonderful thing. This is the second time I presented here, and the first time I came from MM off of the south entrance exit. This time I came off of the north one. I don't know why, I just did. And the whole time I'm driving going, I thought I had done this before. I thought I knew this building. And I ended up at the same place. But, you know, you're always questioning whether you're making the right turn or not. Sometimes you just have to give it up to GPS. But if you don't have that, especially the elderly people, they just tend to not use electronics as much as others do. They just wander around. My mother-in-law, how do I explain this? My other mother-in-law lives with us. She's 83 years old. Had an eye doctor's appointment on East Town Mall a month or so ago. I can't believe my husband did this, but said, you just go. It's easy to get there. I'm going, really? It's like a 40-minute drive for an 80-year-old on the interstate. And he's like, yeah, she'll be fine. She got lost around the Capitol Square. I'm not sure how she got to the Capitol Square. Obviously, she turned right instead of left, or left instead of right, but anyway, things like that happen on a normal basis. Now, she is not diagnosed with any sort of memory care issues. Sometimes I wonder, but we all get lost. So it's a balance. What is this going on? Are we just lost that day? Did we just have a bad day? Or is it that we're really confused and this happens all the time? A person who organizes their grocery list on a very detailed basis all of a sudden just decides, oh, I don't need one. I'll just pick up whatever I want. Playing games, all of a sudden they can't remember which card is high or what numbers mean what. That's a little different.
Some people have difficulty with math or with reading in a way that's unusual to them. And once again, this is a change in that person. So for example, we all know somebody who was never able to balance their checkbook, right? So that wouldn't be a warning sign for them. But if somebody who always balanced their checkbook to the penny suddenly was paying bills, the same bill over and over, and not able to balance their finances, well, that would be a sign for them.
Again, change in behavior. Confusion with time and place. Well, those retirees that live in my home never know what day it is. The only way they judge it is if I'm home. If I'm home, it has to be weekend, because I have a job, so I have to be there. But that's normal. That's okay. You know, when you don't have a set schedule and you don't know what's going from day to day, that's why we have calendars, right? We all have ways to jot down when our appointments are. It's important to have that. But when you're not suddenly not writing those things down and then you can't remember, did I go to my doctor yesterday or did I not? Then it's a little questionable. understanding visual images and spatial relationships, balance. As you get older, everybody has issues with balance. That's why they say it's helpful to do some sort of exercise when you're elderly, whether you come to a senior center like this or whether you go elsewhere to the Y or to a gym or whatever. It's good to do that. But when it starts getting into a problem area, when you have trouble reading, in general, we've all learned how to read at a very young age. When that becomes an issue or you don't recognize the words on the page, kind of think about that. The interesting thing for me is determining color or contrast. Dementia and Alzheimer's obviously is a brain concern. One of the big things that it changes is your eyesight. Colors change. They don't, you won't just flat out lose your color, but you lose the contrast. That's why when you see a lot of facilities that work with memory care, they use either black or red lettering because those are the colors that people see in general. Red is a very bright color, if you think about it, as opposed to a blue or a light green. I love mint green. Not a good idea with people who have some sort of memory care because their brain may be functioning differently and see those colors as something completely different. Also your spatial awareness, your side vision, there's a word for that, it gets smaller. As your eyes change, it starts to get really close in and so people can only see what's right in front of them.
Alzheimer's disease is not just a disease of memory. It can affect other things too. It can affect the way that we perceive what we see. So sometimes somebody in the early stages of Alzheimer's might go to the eye doctor because they're having trouble seeing, and in fact, their vision is just fine, but the way they're perceiving what they're seeing may be difficult.
There's many, many medical reasons why you may be experiencing any of these 10 warning signs. That is why it's important to go to your doctor and indicate that I'm having this issue. What can I do to help to move forward with this? Is this, there's a stigma about having dementia or Alzheimer's. People just kind of stand back and get a little freaked out about the whole thing. If you are worried about it, go see your doctor because there's so many medical things that could be the cause of your eyesight, your walking and dizziness, your stability in general. So always start with your general practitioner and ask the questions. Problems with words and speaking and writing. Again, I think I've spoken about this. There's a video here that just is the very first time I saw a Alzheimer's presentation. It was this exact one. And we watched this video and I went straight home and went to my husband and went, "Your mother talks like this." And he kind of just freaks out, but it's okay. We get through it. But struggles with vocabulary, not naming normal subjects. Not remembering persons' names, not remembering your pet's name that you've had forever. And again, it's well hidden because you always say, "Oh, little Scooby, a little Scruffy." That's not his name, but, "Oh, he's a scruffy little dog, so I'm going to call him Scruffy today." Well, okay, but if that name changes every single day, you kind of have to think about it.
The other thing that I've increasingly been struggling with are words, which I've dealt with words my entire life, as an avid reader, as a reporter, as a writer. I struggle with them now.
That was not a video thing. That was his normal conversations because he has dementia and Alzheimer's. So, Not being able to catch your words and losing interest. My father-in-law at the later stages, he just would wander off. He'd start strong. Hey, I remember when I said, oh. And you're all sitting at the edge of your seat going, what story were you going to tell? And he looks at you like, what? Oh, never mind. And then we go on. So they tend to kind of lose track. Misplacing things, we kind of talked about that. The key is not being able to retrace your steps. Unknowingly, I started doing this with my son, who is now 27. When he was much shorter, he would lose his favorite toy. And I would say, well, when did you see it last? Where were you? How long ago was it? So it kind of forced him to go, oh yeah, I was at this room and did this, there, and that. Now when he loses his wallet, he does it himself. And I think we all do that if you start paying a little closer attention. When I can't find my car keys, it's like, well, I just drove yesterday morning, went to the grocery store, came home, oh, I had groceries. Groceries gets on the counter. Nope, not on the counter. Well, unpack the groceries. It's in the fridge next to the milk. Oh, okay, found it. When you are not able to step back like that and remember what happened in detail in order to find your lost item, then it's a little different, and we need to be more aware of that. Some of the people who experience this type of thing, because they can't retrace, they tend to blame others. My daughter was here yesterday. She must have taken it. It must have. The dog grabbed it. I'm sure he buried it in the yard. You know, or they find unusual things in the freezer for no reason. They just are looking. People with Alzheimer's and dementia are looking for reasons to justify what they can't, and that's okay. But those of us around them have to be aware of that and kind of work through it.
So some people wonder if, they lose their keys or their glasses or their purse, is that a sign of Alzheimer's? And one thing that I would say about that is, for most of us, we might misplace something, but then if we retrace our steps, we can usually find it. We can usually remember. For a person with Alzheimer's, sometimes they're not able to retrace their steps. Sometimes that memory is just gone. And so when they do find their keys next to the phone because they got interrupted by a phone call when they were coming in, they set their keys down in an unusual space, and there they are next to the phone. If that happened to you or me, we'd probably remember, oh yeah, the phone was ringing when I came in the door. I put down my keys. The person with Alzheimer's might not remember. They might wonder who's moving their keys around because they never put their keys by the phone. So that's just a little bit of a difference in some of the dynamics with losing things in Alzheimer's.
Decreased or poor judgment, especially when dealing with money. We all know that the scammers kind of prey on the elderly. As a child of an elderly parent, we warn my mother and my mother-in-law constantly, don't forget, we're all okay. You get a call that we need jail money, no, don't pay it. We'll sit in jail, it's okay. So they tend to just kind of fall for all of that a lot quicker because they just aren't seeing the scam that's involved. They're taking everything at face value. So you have to kind of pay attention to that. There's a video here too. If they're changing their grooming habits, wear different clothes that they normally don't wear. And yeah, maybe I wear different clothes every once in a while because I happen to dig farther back in my closet. But if it's completely out of character for them, start asking a little bit, wondering what's going on.
I count my house, and all of a sudden everything was okay with me. It's like, oh, it's a pile, I'm tired. So my dining room table usually looked like it was someone's office, because I always would say I would do it tomorrow. And then my bedroom, as far as clothing, I would just put it in a corner, put it in a chair. And all of this is just, I wouldn't say it looked like I was a pet rat, but really I was, because I never threw anything away. I always would say, I'll get to it, but I never did get to it. So just the way of my standard of living, it was actually decreasing.
Withdrawing from work and social activities. My father-in-law he had hearing aids. He started with, I can't hear you. So they got hearing aids. He started losing his sentences, so he ended up with a pacemaker. There's always medical reasons, and it's great, like I said, go see the doctor and go through those steps. But remember that they know what's going on as well. So after a while, they just withdraw. They just step away. We get together as a family. We have a family, and there's 8 of us that get together at least 3 or 4 times a year, just sit around the dining room table. It's too much talking. He couldn't keep track of conversations, especially if there's more than one person speaking at a time. So he would just sit there and back away. The further the disease progressed, the less he spoke, the quieter he got. He was, when I first met him, he was very outgoing, very happy-go-lucky kind of guy, and his personality completely changed because he knew things were wrong. So he just stepped back because he didn't want to show people something's wrong. He wanted things to be as it always was. So they tend to just kind of let everybody do their thing and hope that they don't notice. They have a hard time keeping up with their favorite team activity and so on. Step to a different parent. My father, who passed years ago, was always a very, very busy man, but he liked football. Towards the end of his life, he could watch the Packers 24/7, and he'd always think it was a brand new game. Didn't matter if it was reruns or how old the game actually was. He didn't keep track of who the players were. It was the green and gold across the screen, and he was very excited about it. We didn't even try to explain it to him because he just would get angry. So it's like, that's fine, Dad, watch the game.
One of the most common changes, and early on, is the person's comfort zone shrinks a little bit, and then that gets worse throughout the course of the illness. So they're less comfortable going out, they're less motivated to do things than they were in the past. So there's some change in day-to-day functioning that way. I think people also lose confidence in their cognitive abilities because they may not recognize someone or know their name or find the right word, and they'll feel awkward, and they don't want people to notice that, so they feel more comfortable at home or in situations with family where they're very, very comfortable with that wouldn't concern them. So people tend to withdraw a little bit and be less outgoing. That's can be one of the early signs of Alzheimer's.
And the final one, the changes in mood and personality, that's basically it. They're just, my father-in-law was just flat out angry. My dad was extremely angry. My father-in-law, who, like I said, sweet as pie, he started swearing. He did a very good job of adjusting his anger. If he was told he's getting a little upset, he would take a deep breath and know that this is what's going on. Part of being diagnosed early and understanding what the disease is and knowing that this might happen. This person might get angry and might not like someone who they absolutely love, but they can change how they perceive that person. So for them to be aware that that might happen gives the caregiver an opportunity to say politely, don't get upset, it's okay. And then my father-in-law would just take a deep breath and sit there for a moment, and then switch. He was just fine. So the moods and personalities would change quite a bit. Of course, there's confusion, suspicion, everything's changing in their brain, and nobody knows for sure where it's going to land. Not even the individual themselves. So it gets frustrating. I get frustrated when I just can't seem to can't make a pie crust to save my soul. I get upset about that. But think about having that issue every day, all day. Everything you do just seems to be a challenge. I would get upset as well. So kind of keep that in mind when dealing with someone who may or be working with this type of disease.
Another early sign of Alzheimer's or dementia is subtle changes in behavior. So all of a sudden, the family may notice the person is more easily irritated, or more impatient, or a little moody, or have a shorter fuse, or more anxious. Now, there's lots of things that can cause that, but often that can be an early symptom of Alzheimer's or go along with the early symptoms of memory loss.
Okay, that's our 10 warning signs. Anybody have any questions or comments?
Can they medicate that without the anger and the frustration without making them a zombie?
They can. It's a very detailed conversation with the doctor and dosages and so on. Because like any other medication, the dosage may be too high, then it turns into the whole zombie thing. But of course that's different depending on your person, your personality, your size, your shape, so on and so forth. The doctor needs to make that decision. And they work, there's another slide that we'll get to. It's not just one doctor that's going to tell you this. You're going to have multiple appointments with multiple doctors. This is a long process, but very much worth it. So to just know what you're up against, because you just don't know. There's a lot of different things that doctors can do that can help answer a lot of questions of what you're experiencing or why you're experiencing what you are. Okay, does that help you? Okay, any other questions? Yeah?
When they make rash, disturbing comments, sometimes you don't know how to respond.
Mm-hmm.
My sister has had memory issues for 2 to 3 years, was just recently diagnosed as Alzheimer's. And she said yesterday, I think I'd rather lose an arm or a leg than my memory.
Yep. My father-in-law would get tremors, I guess, in his legs. So, and like you said, he would swear and just say, I wish I would just die. This is ridiculous. Can't do anything, and now this is happening, and I can't stop that either. They're going to say things like that. It's hurtful, but perhaps it's honest. I mean, they're reaching a point in their life where they're experiencing things that many people have never experienced before. So, listen what they're saying, try to calm, be neutral, but you have to kind of accept, what it is, or respond in a calming voice at least, because there's not much that can happen. You need to show support and kind of listen and acknowledge that that's how they feel. Okay? Do I see somebody else? Yeah.
Do you know anything about having neurological testing, maybe especially if this type of disease is in a family or in a sibling group? Because one of my cousins, his 2 of his older sisters each had it, and there's a little separation between them. And I just briefly through a messenger, he said he was having neurological testing done a couple weeks ago, and I don't know, is there stuff that they can do, or is that more
There
just
are
go to
many-
the doctor?
There's many tests that can happen, and step back to one of the very first slides that showed the different types of dementia that can happen. Lewy bodies is one that deals with neurological issues. And Heidi, who is the manager of those of us who do the community outreach, her husband, I believe, I'm going to speak out of turn here, has had this experience, and she's talked about different types of tests that family members can take to see if they're susceptible, or maybe a generational or some sort of family history sort of thing. If you're at all concerned about it, I would suggest talking to a doctor. My husband did the same exact thing when his dad passed. He's like, he's the eldest as well, and he's like, oh no, that means I'm next. And I kind of forget things. Should I go to the doctor? I'm like, yes, you should ask him. Because asking a question with your doctor is not going to harm anything. And you might learn something. You never know. Alzheimer's and dementia has changed a lot in the multiple years, in the most recent years, because the Alzheimer's Association has been getting out there and has been raising funds and doing a lot of great things with medical research as it relates to Alzheimer's and dementia. So that they're learning a lot about it. There's a lot more tests coming out, and things are new all the time. And you never know what's going to be out there. It's helpful to do your own research, but you can get lost in research as well. So start with your doctor, and they may ask you to go see another doctor to do further tests. So, and again, it could be a medical thing that's happening that you're experiencing that needs to be taken care of as well. So you just never know. Okay, so we're going to go with next steps. Let's go back to the Garcias. One of the sisters asked if he had seen the results of the doctor's tests from Mom, and they want to decide if it's serious.
Memory is not all or none, especially when there are early symptoms or signs. So on a good day, people might function very well and not really even, no one notices there's a memory problem. But on other days, especially if they're tired, then things become more noticeable. So memory is variable. It's not all or none. And then there are different type of symptoms that develop for each person. So some people may have trouble with language, may have trouble with organizing themselves, may have trouble navigating while driving, and other people don't have the same symptoms. So you don't have to have every symptom of Alzheimer's to be concerned. And I think the most important thing is determining what has changed from that person's normal level of functioning. And usually people have a pretty keen sense of, what they can normally do well. And then when either they or the family notice that there has been some change from that usual pattern of functioning, that should be a warning sign to people. But they don't have to check up all the boxes.
Okay, so we've talked about the 10 signs and that there's so many variables. And then to just be aware and see your doctor. Ultimately, that's it. People close to an individual will see the signs first. The person that spends a lot of time with this individual is going to notice, well, she's acting a little different today. But then if you start speaking with each other about noticing signs, then you have to talk about, do you want to move forward with it? They may be noticing signs, but they're not going to say anything. So it's a big communication process that should happen if you're seeing this with your loved one. it is extremely important to have the early detection, to talk to your doctor as soon as you think about it or see any issues. Let's learn more about that.
You know, it's a very interesting phenomenon that people who have memory problems are often less aware of it than family members or their friends who know them well. One of the reasons for that is our ability to monitor ourselves, which is an important part of brain function, decreases when we start having memory problems. Not in everybody, but commonly, in more than half the people with memory problems. So the person is just not keeping track of the trouble they're having day to day. But the family members are, paying attention. If they're paying attention, they see, boy, this is starting to happen a lot, and the person's not aware of it. So the family's more aware, and they may talk to their loved one about it, and they say, I've noticed you've been repeating yourself. And they say, I'm not repeating myself. And that could either be due to the fact that they're not aware of it, or they may not want to acknowledge it.
I was so adamant about what was happening to Daryl. I wasn't sure. I didn't know. And this wasn't the person that I know. This wasn't the person. Daryl was my husband was very, he always had to be building or designing or working with his hands. And it was getting to the point where he wasn't, and he was becoming very frustrated when he was forgetting to do things or go places.
So it's a lot of observation. And then let's talk about what the 10 steps to approach the concerns are and how you might be able to have that conversation. There is a handout up here if you'd like to bring it home, and it's just a couple questions that you can work your way through if you would like to have a conversation with somebody, to just jot down what you're seeing, how you want to talk about it, where do you want to talk about it, and so on. So there's a few questions on here that just might help you kind of frame your conversation with this individual, but we'll talk about that a little bit more too. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly because we're running out of time, but again, that handout is there for you, which kind of steps through the whole thing as well. So you're seeing the changes in a personality of a person. Some behaviors are changing, you're aware of it. Is there something else going on? Is the couple not getting along really well? Is there a child that might be having troubles that this person is distracted? There's so many examples of what, there might be something else happening, so keep that into account. Learn about the signs. Thank you, you're here. That's great. Then start asking friends, family, and others that are close to that individual. Have you noticed? I've noticed this. Have you noticed? That way you can kind of justify your own feelings and make sure that it's not a, oh, I'm just being picky type of thing. It's more of, this is really a behavior that's happening and not just what I'm seeing. And then have those conversations. Here's the key point. Who should be having those conversations? If I went to my mother-in-law and said, I've noticed that you're forgetting things, she would just yell and scream at me and point her finger and run away. Now, if my husband would say the same exact thing, she'd sit down and want to talk about it. So it's very important to know or think about who should be talking to this individual, making it a safe place and having an honest conversation. We want to set yourself up for success when having these conversations. Time and place is extremely important. Try to find someplace neutral, not mine, not yours. Probably not a public place. But if there's a nice park that they like to go to, what a great time for a nice little walk. If there's the center here that they like to go to, maybe after playing a game of cards, you can sit down and have some coffee. whatever works for that individual, whatever keeps them in a nice calming state of mind, so you can have an honest conversation. And then think about the conversation. How do you want to approach it? Because if you approaching a conversation, no matter what it is, as saying something's wrong with you, it's not going to help. It's not going to support a good general conversation to bring through. You present it more of, I'm a little concerned. Are you okay? I've noticed a few things. What do you think? So have the gentle conversation, and then offer to go to the doctor with them. They don't have to do this alone. You know, I'm just nervous about you driving out by yourself. How about if I take you to your doctor and I can sit in the waiting room, or I can come in with you, whatever you feel comfortable doing. So offer up your help. If you're concerned enough to have a conversation with this individual, I'm presuming that you're concerned, you're willing to put in a little bit of time and effort to help them through the process. So it's helpful to be supportive. It's probably not going to go well the first time, because nobody likes to hear that there's something wrong with them. So the way it's presented and how you talk about it is very important, but also to just don't give up. Continue to have those conversations, and maybe it's just a little tidbit, oh, I found your keys. Now remember, we put them here. You know, or make a joke, ha, found your keys in the freezer. Must have been putting some groceries away, here you go. You know, they know what's going on, and they can kind of put it together. But remember that it's not going to be just a quick, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to go see the doctor, and you'll be fixed. It's not going to happen. So work through that. Reach out for support. The Alzheimer's Association has a tremendous amount of support groups and online access and a 24/7 helpline that is answered by nurses constantly that will help you and direct you. Of course, your doctor's office will help you. They're going to give you multiple options as well as, like I said earlier, other doctors that might be able to do some more tests and so on. So, again, I'm going to murder these names. Geriatrics, neurology, neuropsychology, psychiatrists, and so on. You'd be better at that than I am. All of these doctors have information about this. But because the disease is different for every person could see a different type of doctor with their diagnosis. So start with your general practitioner. Go through all the general tests to do your physical health. They're going to, and may already have been asking you, who's the president? Count back. Somebody told me they had to count backwards from 100 by sevens. Don't ask me to do that. It's not going to happen. But the doctors have a general questionnaire that they have to administer once you hit a certain age. That's a cognitive test. So because they're asking stupid questions means they're actually doing their job. So answer them accurately as you can, and try not to make too much fun of them. But the doctors are extremely important. Again, early detection is extremely important. I'm going to skip this if I can. Because you can take advantage of medications, you can take advantage of the resources, the helplines, the support groups, the family members who could be or will be caregivers have a lot to learn, and there's a lot of resources out there for them as well. Doctors will have that. There is also different types of, what do I want to call them? Support groups. I'm going to just skip through here. Do that. Sorry. There's the different screenings that the doctors may do for you. And of course, those are different types of assessments from the doctors. I'm going to jump right into the resources here. So again, 24/7 hotline, the Alzheimer's online resources, community resources that are associated with your Alzheimer's. So if you go into the alzheimers.org, type in the /CRF, you'll get the community areas that are closest to you. So you can look more closely to find out where that information is. And then there's also fundraising trial match. That's the word I'm looking for. There's different types of trials that you can participate once you've been diagnosed, or actually even when you're not diagnosed. It depends on the trials. The Alzheimer's Association's funds goes towards medical research. That research can be a trial of a new medication, but they also need people who are not already diagnosed in order to participate in these trials to have a statistically viable research. So if you're interested in trying something, the trial matches are available to the general public. You just have to indicate your interest on alzheimers.org, and they can give you information. For those that have been diagnosed, that may be a way that you can participate in new types of medical research that may not be available to you yet. So if you've exhausted all the medical possibilities of treatment, trial matches may be a great opportunity, depending on where they're at, what stages they're at, and what they're doing. So there's many opportunities through the Alzheimer's Association. You can volunteer to be a community resource presenter, or to work at the runs or walks. They're all over the United States. They also have many different types of fundraising. The Longest Day, which is basically a year-round fundraising opportunity. It is named by the longest actual day of sunlight. However, it happens all year round. Groups can get together to do a fundraiser. There's a bake sale going on right now for the month of February. So anybody who has a bake sale can go in to put their funds into that Longest Yard fundraising package. Of course, we have our walks. The one in Madison is in October. It was down at Warner Park last year. Advocacy, they actually go to the Capitol. There are groups that get together and talk to their representatives and express their interest in further funding for more research. So again, there's resources here. I think I'm going to skip through all of these because I just talked about them. Does anybody have any other questions, comments, or concerns? Yeah, think of that.
So my husband's brother has significant memory loss, and we found that we could ask him all kinds of questions, but he just wasn't telling us anything, but he couldn't remember. And so we found that we had to start going with him to all his appointments, whether it was the physician, the psychologist, American Family, you know, whatever he was going to, we needed to go with him because he could never come back and tell you what he was told.
How many of us go to the doctor and remember exactly what the doctor told us we were supposed to do? Yeah, one out of everybody. Yeah. I think somebody would disagree with that. But anyway, I never remember what the doctor tells me. Sometimes they speak so fast, you're lucky if you can understand the words they're saying. But when it gets to be consistent and troublesome, it's important to have that support. And a caregiver is not just a spouse or a child or a family member. A caregiver is a friend, a person that's there for that individual. So a caregiver is someone who goes to those doctor's appointments to help them so they remember what was being said or what medication, to gather the paperwork that comes with all of those appointments so that that paperwork can sit on the table so that they can review it. If they suddenly don't, they realize, oh, I should probably look at this to see what the doctor said. That paperwork is always there. It's one of those memory little reminder things that isn't in your face, remember this, but it's just that paper might be good to be there and left for them. So it's not unusual to have assistants at doctor's appointments. Anybody else? It's our time, but I'm more than happy to hang out. Okay, I want to thank you all for coming and visiting with me today, or listening to me visit. With our talks, the Alzheimer's Association does utilize your name and zip code to select or apply for other grants. So if you haven't checked in at the desk, please sign in at the table here with just your name and your zip code. And if you'd like handouts to be emailed to you, you can indicate your email on that handout as well. And Heidi will be sending out the quarterly announcements of different learning opportunities for you. I do get the sign-in sheet from the back office, so if you're registered there and utilize that, that would be great. So
We thank you for coming.
you're very welcome. I'm happy to come back anytime you'd like me to chat. There's at least another 5 or 6 different types of educational opportunities as it relates to caregivers that the Alzheimer's Association does present as well, not to mention a plethora of other information. So happy to come back anytime. I know how to get here. So you guys are always so welcoming. Thank you very much for having me.
Repetition helps, doesn't it?
It